Hello everyone, my name is Priya. Welcome to my channel Lady Green Thumb 2. This month I will be giving you an update of the first week of August, all that I have done in my garden as well as how I harvested what was collected. I just harvested cucumber and black-eyed peas. I still have a little bit more to go, which I will grab from the kitchenette bed here. This is either black-eyed peas or mung bean. I think it's mung bean, but I'll soon find out. Malabar spinach was coming into the pathway, so I trained that up. The arbor here, as well as the sweet potato vines here. They were on the ground, and I put them on top of the hardware cloth. I harvested some of the yellow and pink zinnias, as well as pruned it up to make it look a little neater. I'll put a picture here of what I cut for flower arranging. And then I did trellis or train the cucumber up here and put some support on it. Right here. And I'll give you a quick tour of garden number 1 because that was missed during the July update. This bed has all peppers with flowers at the head of the bed. Shishito peppers here. And I can show you shishito pepper. This one right there too. I believe this is a larger, sweeter pepper, the tall ones here, and in the middle and the back. And then hot peppers on this side. They're starting to get red, and I'm collecting them to make my own chili oil. I found a recipe on YouTube, and I'll be following that. There's a lot of red ones. So as they become red, I pick them off. And I believe this is the Anaheim, and I have about 4 plants of them right here in the row here. And sunflowers in the middle that I'm using as trellising right here. I did pull this pepper branch back and behind this stem for support. Bed number 2, by the way, all beds were fed a fertilizer of phosphate so I can get good fruit and root growth. And in this bed, I did forget to mention that I planted okra once the corn had come out, and those have come up for the most part, and I just thinned out some of them that had more than 2. And eventually when it gets to about a foot, maybe 6 inches tall, I will prune to 1 okra. And I'll probably cut back some of the black-eyed peas. For bed number 3, I watered this bed in and also moved back some of the vines of the cucumber. Now bed number 4, you'll notice it looks a lot more cleaner. I had taken out most of the tomatoes that were on the ground. It was about only 3 or 4 tomatoes that was crowding the bottom. and I basically cut them right at the base. This one here I cut over here. They were very long branches, and I just kept the more tender ones in, as well as here. The ground cherry was also cut back. I think I had about 4 or 5 seedlings here, and I let them go, so I kept the most good looking one in place. And then this tomato here, which is a yellow cherry tomato, I'm waiting for it to ripen, and then I'll probably prune this back as well, because I have tomatoes in this bed in the middle, 3 of them, and I'll have at least 2 here. And then today what I did was also plant another section of the Detroit dark red beet in this spot right here. And I plan to plant carrots also, maybe in this area over here. Once I thin back the basil for basil tea, it'll look nice and clean in here, and the carrots will have a chance of sprouting. You can tell the beets have come up. This was planted July the 20th, and this was on July the 24th. The carrots, I think because I was out of town, the board that I had placed in this section had actually caused the seedlings to become leggy. The seedlings on the very far edge there were not covered, and you can tell those are shorter. So the next round of carrots that I plant, that I don't cover it, especially when I'm not going to be around to take the board off in time. And then these tomatoes here, I'm probably going to transplant elsewhere. Another thing that I had done was empty some of the compost. I do compost my kitchen scraps and any yard waste that I know would fit in my bins. I had started with this bin here, and it was very hard to turn. I did have something to turn it, but once it filled up, it was very difficult to do it myself. So I decided that I'm going to do 6 months on and 6 months off, that type of schedule, and this has been sitting for at least 6 months to a year, and I decided to create this compost. I believe it was really 6 months ago, and I might stop filling that. And I started to harvest this, and I'm going to put a picture of what the compost looks like that I harvested, and I put that in my grow pots that have sweet potato, because the tops were showing. I believe I put the picture up or have the video of it being exposed, so I put the compost on top of that. Here. This plant and the grow pot and this grow pot, as well as this yam. And I had watered everything in over here as well. And notice that there are buds here. And this is the lima bean, so that is going to be really good if it comes to fruition. I had also cleaned up the pile of cuttings that were over here and put them in a bag. So that will be going out to the curb for the city to collect soon, because they were larger twigs, which I didn't want to cut to smaller pieces. Another thing that I did do is start to prune back some of the leaves of the okra just on this side. And I covered my sunflower here because this is the, I believe, the sunken. I'll put it up here on the video of what this was that I'm saving the seed for. This is the biggest flower head from all that were planted. And that completes what was done so far for August the 2nd. With all this talk around the basil tea, I thought I'd walk you through how I'm preparing it here. It is August the 5th, and I had harvested this basil a couple of days ago right here, and it's a combination of Thai, Genovese, cardinal, and maybe even some licorice basil. I already made a batch of tea a few days ago, and this was what was remaining, so I thought I'd make another batch since I shared some with a friend, or will be sharing some with a friend, and I'm almost done with what I had saved for myself. So what I did was, or what I'm doing is, I'm taking the stalks and I'm removing the leaves in this bowl, because the first batch I made, I did it with the very thick stalks, and I think it was a little more earthy, so I want the more basil taste to come through, and I'm making a smaller batch. I want it to be really infused. Now that I've removed all the leaves as best as I could from the stems here on the left, I'm going to go ahead and pour some water. I brought it to boiling, and now I let it sit for a little bit, and then I'm now pouring onto the basil. I will let this sit for at least 30 minutes. The last batch I had let sit for 1 hour, and it was a really nice, intense basil flavor, and I really did enjoy that. So I thought I'd make a smaller batch with just the leaves. Now with all these stems, they will not go to waste. They will go in my compost. Which I have a bin right next to my sink. I'll put that in later after I fold it in half so it fits into the bin. It has been 30 minutes and it's time to remove the basil from the bowl here, and I'm going to put it in the strainer. This is what the tea looks like with most of the leaves taken out. I strained everything out completely into a smaller bowl where I am going to let the water cool down so I can put it in a glass jug and then straight into the fridge. And I will set this colander down into this bowl so so it can continue to drain, and then I can go ahead and add whatever is collected at the bottom here into this bowl. The last batch was sweetened with Splenda, and I'm going to do the same here. I'll need at least one packet, and I'll taste it and maybe add the second pack. You can certainly add any other sweetener such as honey or agave to the tea at this point while it's warm so it can be dissolved. Another half of a Splenda packet was added, and it will be mixed in, cools down, and I will go ahead and update you when I'm ready to fill my jug and put it in the fridge. Transfer this over to the jug that I have ready to go in the fridge. Today is August the 6th, and I could not resist the urge to plant seeds in my house so I could transplant them once they were just about sprouting outside in spots that are available, either in my raised beds or in raised beds that I volunteer at for a community garden. Seeds I'm going to plant today are kohlrabi, and I might be getting ahead of myself here to plant them this soon, but there are so many seeds in this packet that I can go ahead and plant it if it does not come up. And then I'm going to also be planting a zucchini squash, which is a compact one that is called 8-ball, and this is from M.I. Gardener. I also made labels, and what I put on the labels is the name of the vegetable or plant, the specific type, today's date, and then information on it such as how long it'll take to sprout, as well as the temperature that it thrives in and how far apart to plant each vegetable. And also some of the information in this case for the kohlrabi, that it is frost hardy and how much sun it needs. Also how many days it would take to mature from a transplant. And then I have this skewer, which it was longer, but I just cut it off, and I'm going to use it to make holes the depth of what is stated on the packet, which in this case is a 1/4 inch. I'll be back once everything has been planted out, which I plan to plant 6 kohlrabi over here, and then 2 of the zucchini squash. Since squash seeds fall in the category of a hard-coated or hard-shelled seed, it needs to be planted at least 1 inch deep so that the shell of the seed has enough friction from the potting mix or soil to rub against it while it is sprouting. I first made holes in these 2 pots. That's where I'll be planting my zucchini squash, and I made it at least about 1/2 inch to a an inch deep, just so that I could have enough space to place the seed in. And I placed it in, I have placed it into the middle of the pot, and I only decided to use one seed per pot. So I'm going to just press it in so it's about half an inch, and then I'm going to cover it over and press it down. Sorry, that was not in the picture. And I'll do the same with this one, and I'll press it down to about half an inch and then cover it over. So all the seeds have been planted. The kohlrabi was only a quarter of an inch deep, and I planted about 2 or 3 in each of these pots. And I will lightly spray the top of each of the pots. The last thing that will be done is to put a label. I'll put this one over here. So it shows the kohlrabi 6 on this side. And then 2 of the zucchini squash 8-ball on the left. On August the 7th, I started the day with making chai tea, with picking mint from my bedroom bed and lemongrass from the cabana. They were washed thoroughly in the kitchen and cut up in smaller pieces. Pot with all the herbs were placed on the stove, and all the ingredients that were needed were placed to the left, including water, loose tea, a tea masala mix, and ground cardamom. Three-quarter cups of water was added to the herbs, and the stove was turned on to a medium flame. Next, tea was added. 1 tablespoon and a little bit more was added since I was making more than 1 cup. A dash of tea masala was added. And ground cardamom. Just a pinch or 2. This was then set to come to a boil. After it had come to a boil, it was stirred very lightly. After the tea with the water was boiling for at least 2 or 3 minutes, the flame was reduced to a medium heat to get ready to pour in some milk. 2/3 of a cup of milk was added to the boiling water tea. An additional quarter cup to half a cup of milk was added so that I could lighten up the tea, and this you can do to your liking and use any type of milk from 1% to whole. The tea was stirred after small bubbles were starting to form on the sides and the middle. At this point, a very close eye needs to be paid attention to the tea since it could boil over and the heat would need to be reduced to medium to low according to your range top. After reducing the heat to medium to low, you can continue stirring it or get ready for the next step. You may have your cups with the sieve ready to go along with any sweetener of your choice. Here I have chosen to use honey. Later in the day, after having had my cup of tea, I was able to come out for about 45 minutes and tend to the garden. Right now it is early afternoon and 93 degrees Fahrenheit. I was able to get quite a few things done. And I'll make my way into the raised bed area to show you exactly what was done. Everything was watered in. Bed number 1 very lightly. Bed number 2, you'll notice that the okra, most of them have come up. The seeds that I had planted in the house of kohlrabi will likely be placed in spots that are open where some of the okra had not come up. Going back to bed number 3, I had also watered this in. For bed number 4, I decided to go ahead and plant those tomatoes that were in the red pots here, directly in the ground in the middle since I had the space. And you'll notice that the beets that I had planted earlier in the week have actually sprouted. And there are 6 spots out of 12 that have come up. So I'm still waiting for about half of them to sprout. And then the beets that were planted previously have been growing quite a bit. So in this area this is the Brad's Atomic grape, and this is Ice's candy. And this I got from a farmer's market. And then I did plant another tomato. I think it's a grape type as well. You'll notice that the stem is quite long, but I kind of buried it sideways. A fact about tomatoes is that you see the little hairs on the stems here. They can grow into roots. So the deeper you plant it, after you remove the lower leaves, they have a lot of ground. There were an additional 2 tomatoes in another black pot, and I went ahead and placed them in the front of bed 5. One in this spot here and another back there. And I watered everything in well because it's so hot. I filled the waste bag and that will go to the curb today. I almost forgot to update you on the moringa. As you can see, it is reaching up to the gutter line there. I had noticed earlier in the week that there is a small moringa plant or tree also growing in here. So it must have been when I potted up this large one that I had extra seed in it, or I potted up another pot because I needed to put it somewhere. I had watered in everything here as well as my area in the bedroom bed. And this is what the cantaloupe looks like that I had mentioned in one of my videos. It was lopsided on one side and it actually filled in, which I was very pleased about. And this, I would think, would be ready maybe in a week or less. And the way just to know that is there's a tendril that comes out. Once it completely dries back, that's a very good indication that the melon is done. And also another indication is the melon will change color and it's already starting to crack. Here's the crack here. I'm going to have to keep a very close eye on this melon just so that the sugars do not come out like the last melon that was harvested from the cabana pots. Thank you for watching and happy gardening.